Hello and welcome to what is going to be a pretty unique video for this channel. Today, I'm going to be taking a closer look at the Luigi's Mansion 3 trailer. But not just an ordinary closer look, I'm going to be analyzing the trailer to see if I can find any extra details that maybe Nintendo hasn't specifically revealed yet. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. The trailer begins with what appears to be a very afraid-looking Luigi waking up. What's the matter, Luigi? You look like you've seen a ghost. Oh, right. The weird thing about opening this trailer with this scene is that they immediately follow it by showing the scene that takes place immediately before it. See, here's Luigi falling asleep in a bright and shiny room, and then he wakes up in the dark and gloomy room. Alright, let's take a look at what appears to be the title screen. The most obvious detail is the title. Luigi's Mansion 3, originally a working title, seems to be the actual title of the game now. If you look all the way up here at the top of the tower, you might just see a friendly face. Or a not so friendly face. A little bit later into the trailer, we come to this scene where Luigi is attacked by a trio of ghosts dressed as maids. But that's not the interesting detail I want to point out. If you look over here on the left, you'll notice that there's a picture of the poltergeist G00. This picture really stands out because most of the pictures we see in this game are either framed pictures of eerie paintings or wanted posters of Luigi. In other words, it looks more like the ghosts are the ones decorating the building, so then why is there a random picture of the poltergeist on the wall? Are the ghosts perhaps studying Egans technology to see if there's a way to beat it? Regardless, let's move on to this part of the trailer, where it shows Luigi actually getting the poltergeist. We actually got a better view of this room from the Treehouse live footage later that day. If you look next to Luigi, you'll see a car. But not just any car, this is the same car that was in the garage of the gloomy manor back in Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon. Moving on, we turn our attention to this bathroom scene. Did you notice the grate only visible in the mirror's reflection? This seems to indicate that the grate is invisible and will need to be revealed using the dark light device. Perhaps this is the part of the game introducing the dark light device, and the mirror is here to sort of guide you into using it. Next, we'll take a look at this brief shot of Egans' new lab. We don't get to see what you can do in the lab, but if we consider Egans Bunker from Dark Moon, we can make some educated guesses. The two top leftmost screens are labeled with B1 and basement respectively. This is most likely where Egans' lab is located, the basement of the hotel. As for the purpose of these screens, they're probably used to select what floor you want to go to. The same way that Dark Moon had a screen that allowed you to select which mission you wanted to attempt. In fact, due to this similarity, I have to conclude that missions will return in Luigi's Mansion 3. However, it seems to me that each floor of the hotel is going to act as its own mission, so you won't be retreading ground the way you were in Dark Moon, but at the same time you're not going to be going up and down between floors like you were in the original game. In other words, it seems like this is going to be a hybrid of the previous games. The top rightmost screen will most likely be used to access the Scare Scraper. Meanwhile, the screen on the bottom left and the screen behind Egans' head will most likely only be used to add extra detail to the scene. Much like how Dark Moon had an entire screen dedicated to just showing you how many pieces of the Dark Moon you've collected. And finally, the last screen over here on the right is most likely going to be the equivalent of Dark Moon's vault. So you will use this screen to look at the ghosts you've captured and the gold that you've collected. And this big container over here is going to be where Luigi deposits the contents of his poltergeist into the vault. Alright, that's all I've got for Egans' lab, so let's move on to the next scene. In this scene, the trailer is demonstrating Luigi's abilities by having him slide between the bars into this store. But, did you notice that above the door there's an image of a dress? This is a fitting image because as we can see when Luigi enters the store, this is a dress store. This store actually connects to this other scene where we can see what appears to be a mall-themed floor of the hotel. The dress store is over here on the bottom right, and there are 3 other major stores in this shot, each of which have a large symbol over the doorway indicating what type of store it is. For example, this store over here on the bottom left has a giant pair of scissors, indicating that this is probably a barber shop. Although, we could have figured that out just by looking at the spinny barbershop pole thing. What are those things called, anyway? Oh, a barber's pole. Okay, fair enough. Anyway, the stores on the top floor are a bit harder to see, but I've determined that the store on the top left has a diamond over the door, indicating that this is probably a jewelry store. Meanwhile, the store on the top right is a bit harder to figure out. It seems to be mostly empty, and it's got a present over the doorway. I'm not sure what this would mean. Perhaps it's a gift wrapping station? So that covers the main 4 stores in this shot, but there's still 1 store left. In between the 2 stores on the top floor, you'll notice a coffee shop. I'm not sure what this could add to the mission. Perhaps coffee-themed ghosts? Watch out for those boo-ristas. Since this is the only shot of this area we get in this trailer, it's hard to say if there will be more to this floor than just these 4 stores. But I think that's unlikely, because you'll notice that each of these 4 stores are actually marked by a second symbol. A spade, a diamond, well, different from the other diamond, a club, and a heart, the 4 suits of a deck of cards. As such, adding any more stores would kind of ruin the motif. Moving on, let's take a look at this scene of Luigi in the bathroom. This scene shows Luigi's weakness to water, but if you look over here to the left, you'll notice something else too. There's a teardrop-shaped gem sitting on the toilet over here. There were 13 gems hidden in each of the 5 mansions of Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon. This seems to show that those gems will be returning in this game, though I find it hard to believe that they would hide 13 gems on each floor, so instead I think they're going to separate the hotel into sections, and each section is going to have 13 gems total. This makes sense when you consider that Mario, Peach, and 3 Toads are all captured by the ghosts. You'll most likely rescue one of these characters after every few floors, with each section of floors having their own set of gems, meaning there will most likely be 5 sets of gems once again. Meanwhile, this specific gem seems to be hidden behind flowing water. As we've just learned, Luigi melts the instant he touches water, meaning you won't be able to just walk up and grab this gem. So how do we get it? Do we use the burst function to jump over the stream? Well, that seems unlikely because we've only ever seen the burst send Luigi, or Luigi, straight upward, meaning you probably can't jump over things. Plus, it seems like this sort of thing would require a little more creative thinking anyway. Alright, now let's take a look at the Scarescraper footage. They showed off and talked about the Scarescraper in detail during the treehouse, so I'm not going to focus on this too much. However, there is one thing in this scene that doesn't get shown off anywhere else. This long, skinny, orange ghost. Based on its appearance, it seems to be this game's equivalent of Dark Moon's Hider Ghost. And we get evidence of that if you look at this scene. Did you see that? No? Let's take a closer look. For only a few frames of the trailer, you can see the ghost as he climbs into an object, acting the same way that the hiders did in Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon. We never see these ghosts jump out to throw something at Luigi, so it's hard to say if they'll work exactly the same as they did in Dark Moon, but I would assume they do. Now for this elevator scene. It's a very short scene, but we get a lot of detail here. First of all, did you notice that the arrow above the elevator is shaped like a movie camera? And once we pan down, we see that that motif continues onto the elevator doors, with a camera over here on the left door, and a few strips of film decorating the right door. This design is fitting because as we saw in the treehouse footage, this floor is themed to be a movie studio. But there's a lot more detail here to discover. For example, if you look back at the arrow, did you know that these notches actually accurately depict what floor you're on? If you notice right below the arrow, there's a stylized number 8, indicating that we're on the 8th floor. And if you count the notches, you'll find that the arrow is pointing at the notch that would correspond to the 8th floor. But wait, you say, that's the 10th notch, so wouldn't it be pointing to floor 10? Ah yes, good catch, but no, because you're forgetting about the basement floor, or should I say, floors. As we know, Egans' lab takes place on floor B1, which means at least one of these notches on the far left would be for B1. But there are 2 notches over here, which means that there's probably a floor B2. And I have some evidence to back that claim up, which we'll take a look at in 1 second. But first, I have to point out how many notches there are in this image. Assuming each of these notches really do correspond to a different floor in the hotel, that would mean that we could count the notches to see how many floors there are in the hotel. Which I did, and it turns out that the hotel goes up to floor 16. Now, let's move ahead to when the elevator doors open, because there's even more information here. Behind Luigi is a mirror. Reflected in that mirror is a panel of buttons. From here we can count how many buttons there are in the elevator to determine how many floors you can reach. According to the notches that we just counted, there should be enough buttons to reach floor 16, but there are actually 17 buttons on this panel. So where does that final button lead? Well, I'm pretty sure it leads to floor 15. Because while yes, it is the 17th button, if you shift all the buttons over to account for the 2 basement floors, suddenly it's only the 15th button. Also, these buttons are the evidence I was referring to for a potential B2 floor. Since Egans' lab is on B1, it's safe to assume that we get access to B1 fairly early into the game. Yet here we are halfway through the game, and the bottommost floor is still inaccessible. Which, to me, seems like pretty solid evidence that there is in fact a floor below Egans' lab. What this floor is, we can only speculate. Perhaps this is where King Boo is hiding, or maybe King Boo is hiding on the elusive 16th floor. It's impossible to tell for now, so all we can really do is move on to the next point. And if you thought we were done with the elevator, you were wrong, because there's still one more thing that I have to point out. As I've already pointed out, Luigi is currently on floor 8, but he also has access to floor 9, which indicates that he's probably already cleared floor 8. And yet, when the elevator door opens, we can see that this floor is still all dark and creepy. This implies that you can revisit previously cleared floors if you want to clear them again. Maybe you missed a gem, or assuming they're still in the game, a boo, or maybe you just really like playing that floor. This detail, in my opinion, reinforces my theory that each floor is going to act like a mission from Dark Moon. And while there's no evidence for it so far, I wouldn't be surprised if you get graded on your performance for each floor when you complete it. Alright, we're finally done talking about the elevator. There aren't a lot of details in the next few scenes, but we do get a better look at some of the themes for the different floors in the hotel, including a castle theme, an overgrown greenhouse theme, and the aforementioned movie studio theme. And now for the final scene of the trailer. Now, if you look very closely, right here, you can just barely make out the corner of what appears to be King Boo. This opens up the possibility that King Boo might, at some point, show up on this very floor. Okay, on a more serious note, if you look over the doorway here, you'll see that this is room 503, which indicates that it's on floor 5, which would mean that it's probably pretty early into the game. In fact, I'm almost positive that this is one of the earliest parts of the game, because Luigi doesn't have the Poltergust G00 yet. I'd wager dollars to donuts that this scene takes place immediately after the scene from the very beginning of the trailer. Except now Luigi's running in the opposite direction, and King Boo is here. There is another detail in this scene. It can be hard to notice because King Boo is very, distracting here. But when he takes a swipe at Luigi with his tongue, his crown lights up, releasing some spirit balls that cause the door to 503 to vanish. This is our first concrete evidence that the Dark Light device does in fact return for this game. And while we haven't gotten to see it in action in the single player mode, I think it's safe to assume that it's going to function pretty similar to the way it did in Dark Moon. And that's the end of the trailer. But there's one more detail of this moment I want to point out. Even though King Boo misses Luigi, he does hit Peach's luggage, causing it to fly across the room and causing Luigi to stumble. This is just a nice little attention to detail that I wanted to point out. And with that, we've reached the end of the trailer. Or so I thought. But as I was combing through this trailer frame by frame, I noticed that there was one frame that really stood out following this scene. It seems that Luigi didn't just stumble, he actually falls over, allowing King Boo to catch up to him. And, well, it doesn't look good. And that brings us to the end of the trailer. For real this time. Do you think I'm misinterpreting any of these details? Did you catch something that I missed? If so, tell me in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and who knows, maybe I'll analyze another trailer someday. But for now, I'm gonna wait for GameXplain to show me everything that I missed in this trailer. So until then, goodbye!